Hi, welcome to my September wrap-ups. I have kind of a short stack for the first time this year. That was kind of crazy. I'm going to start off with definitely a wreck. I am absolutely falling in love with this author, the way that Hong Kong writes. It's just always devastating, honestly, but they're so good. I read Human Acts by Hong Kong. This is such an incredible story, like I said, and it's done like multi-part. And within each part you're learning more about an overarching ideology and setting and things like that. And it will, by the time you're done reading it, it will leave its mark on you, just probably for the rest of my life, and definitely yours if you read it. It was so good, and I want to devour every book that Hong Kong writes at this point. The next book that I read was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I had seen quite a few people talk about that book, and it seemed like it would be really good, things like that. I feel like the topics explored, they were expressed well, but I think it would have driven the point of them all home a lot better had the book been like a novella, like something far shorter, edited down. It just, throughout the book, to get from like plot point A to plot point B, plot point B to plot point C, etc., etc. It drones. It's a lot of filler. It makes for a very boring read for something that really shouldn't have been. But I have seen like many others incredibly wowed by it, so could just be me. The next book that I read, when I get it out of my stack, was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. The cover alone, come on. Also, I don't know if like you can see him. That is definitely Raylo coded, so of course I'm grabbing it. This was my first Emily Henry book. A lot of her books, the like synopsis doesn't really interest me, but that one did. So I do think after reading that, because it was, first of all, it's a great straightforward romance. So you kind of know what you're getting into with like a cute little romance, but also you get this like very intriguing back and forth with the older woman's, like life history, things like that as it goes through. And also I know some people have called that insta love, and sort of, but the book puts like kind of like self-imposed because of the job, like boundaries for them. So you get like a fairly large book where even though they definitely have like a fast like come up on how they feel for each other, it's definitely like slow burned in a way, which is, I thought it was done very well for someone who is not big on the insta love trope. I will say by the end of that book you will be emotional, but it puts the pieces together very well. But like I said, it was my first of Emily Henry's books, and I do think despite some of the synopsis not necessarily looking like something I would be interested in, I will definitely keep an eye out for stuff because the writing itself was so good. The next one that I read this month was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young. This is my first by this author, and again, I had so many people be like, oh, you should read it, because pregnancy tropes are not really my thing, and that's kind of the crux of the bulk of that book. So I was like, well, if a lot of people are saying like it's good, etc., etc., I should at least give it a try. And I'm glad I did, because that was one of probably the best romance reads I have read, not just this, in September, but like for the year. She is an incredible author. One thing too is a lot of romances, at least for me lately, I feel like the dialogue is incredibly cringe, very, as a lot of people say, millennial cringe. That's what it feels like, though. That was not. That was such good characters, deep characters even. The dialogue could be funny without being cringe, which is great. I definitely am eager to read more of her work very soon. The next one that I read was The Paleontologist by Dumas. Obviously, by the cover, you can tell something to do with dinosaurs, right? So here's my issue with it. It starts out great. You get such an amazing atmosphere, which this author is very good at writing. You have like this horror aspect. Yes, you can kind of tell it's like in a thriller, vein, but it brings that horror. I was like, okay, well, maybe this will be something I would actually enjoy. After I feel the atmospheric setup, which was great, and just the story itself, it just went downhill. They were using COVID as like a buzzword, it felt like. And on top of it, I really, really want to get into more dinosaur-related horrors, dinosaur-related books, even dinosaur history at this point. I just really want that. This book sets up like a dinosaur horror aspect, things like that. And after everything's set up, it, like I said, the reason for me it went downhill was it basically turns into a bland cold case study. And that's not what I signed up for. That's not really even the vibe I feel the synopsis kind of gives. And I almost feel like the dinosaur portion just kind of fades away. So it's not what I expected it to be after like the setup and things like that. So it was a letdown for me. One that was not a letdown was The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canas. This is, first of all, look, can we please appreciate the cover? That's gorgeous. Isabel Canas is one of my favorite authors, hands down. I will probably read anything that she puts out at this point, because not only is the way she writes a way where you can get to the end of a chapter and you are going to the next page. It doesn't matter if it's 3 a.m. It doesn't matter if you have work. It does not matter what you're doing. She will make you crave the next chapter. She just implements a writing style that is so impressive, and it's perfect for me. It's what I enjoy. I will say, because I have seen like this, yes, does her books, which are on the thicker side, does her books kind of like take some time to like build up and like build the story? Yes, it is. Every book I've read from her is a slower burning like story. It will like compound on itself. It will build its bricks. But to me, the way she does it, where some books, it just feels slow and arduous to get through them. She does not do that. She will make sure that every chapter is interesting while the overall plot is a slow build. And it's great. I love her stuff. I heavily recommend her works, any of them. They are so good. Another new author, and I will definitely be interested in reading more of hers, is Ava Reid's The Wolf and the Woodsman. Yes, if you can't tell from this cover, I can bring it closer. If you can't tell by the cover, I was at Barnes & Noble, picked it up. I mean, look at that too. It's so pretty. Picked it up off Raylo vibes alone off the photo. I was like, of course. And yes, I know oftentimes I've complained that I do that, and then it's like a book that I wasn't enjoying. That was a book that not only was really good, the author's writing style alone is just very enjoyable. She's very to the point, which I can appreciate. I get very bored with lots of filler, and that's not just books, like movies, TV shows, things like that. When it just feels like there's like a lot of excess nothing burger type stuff, I get very bored. Not only was that a standalone fantasy, which I appreciate heavily, even with it being like a thicker, chunky book, every chapter, every plot, every point of the story, it feels like it's imperative to the story in one way or another, even if it's like a little bit of a slower, moment or something like that. It feels like it was important to be in that book. I appreciate that. And after that, I do think I will be trying to find something else of Ava Reid's that I want to read, because I really enjoy that writing style. Like I said, I've said this for so many videos now. It is an Ali Hazelwood year for me. I have been going through her catalog, reading and listening and everything. Problematic Summer Romance is the sequel to Not in Love. I was not a big fan of Not in Love, first of all. And Problematic Summer Romance kind of gave me the same vibes. It was kind of dull for me. It was very mid. Also, that specifically very much gave contractual obligation. That's how it kind of read. So for me, reading that, I was kind of like, oh, I was actually kind of excited for Mate coming out in October. Now I'm afraid if the sequel was a contractual obligation, if it's going to read like that. One of the big things for Problematic Summer Romance that just really kind of killed it for me was, first of all, the FMC needs to get off the ground. Ali Hazelwood usually writes fairly independent, fairly like strong female characters, which I can appreciate, but this one just read very weak. I did not enjoy a lot of that. And on top of it too, yes, it's an age gap romance. Whether you like that or not, that's, up to the person. But if you're going to read or, obviously write an age gap romance, there's no reason to be reminded constantly that it's an age gap romance. It made for the story to just get very dull very quickly, just in my opinion. And the last book that I read without DNFing was Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. I have read, this is my third book now. I'm pretty sure this was her first, but I've read 3 of these now. The first 2 just weren't really doing it for me. I believe, one I DNF'd and one I finished because it was a short story collection. This one I had high hopes for because the themes and elements used to convey the story were very much something that would be up my alley. So I was like, okay, I want to read it. I will say, incredible start. For a short book, though, it lost its steam so quickly. And I think that's what got me was it. First of all, losing steam in something so short is like, okay. But on top of it, it builds and is also marketed as a horror book. Cool. Like that. It goes from the horror aspects, and there's quite a few horror aspects. Please read content warnings before you read that. But it goes from that to as if she is trying to write a literary style novel. Either or is not a problem, but I feel like it did not work for that. I feel that a lot of it became shock value commentary and like plot points versus just, we're going to use horror to convey this story. And I think if it had stuck to the horror aspect of it, it would have been a much more impactful story. But I will say overall, that last sentence alone in that book will never leave my brain. On to the DNFs. Like I said, this is a short month for me. My first DNF was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. Okay. I like the cover, and I think the idea of this book was really interesting. But again, I struggle with thrillers. It's one of the reasons why I don't really pick up very many unless someone's like, please try it. Please, I'm telling you, this is worth it. That was one of those books. Someone was like, I'm telling you, this will be one of the ones that'll work for you. It didn't. It was just so dull. I feel like my issue at the end of the day is a lot of thrillers like that are just so slow. Like something very interesting will happen in like, let's say the first like 5 chapters. So you're kind of like, okay, let's go. Let's see what happens. And then it's like, you get a book that's like this thick or bigger, even smaller ones. You get to the middle and it's just, I feel like it's like water circling a drain. It's just going in circles. And a lot of times because like I've done this for in other thrillers where I'm like, this is probably what happened. I'll go like the last chapter. Guess what? That did. So like, it just bores me. The next one was Under Lock and Key by Lana Ferguson. I thought the cover was cute. I'm really bad at cover shopping, and then it's like, oh, well, this is kind of interesting, so I'll give it a try. I was so hopeful, and the beginning of that book was very cute. Like, I do feel like there was chemistry in that book. I think it was a cute idea. But it got so bogged down, in my opinion, with, first of all, the dual POV. It felt like it was repeating a lot of things, so it made for like a repetitive read overall. And then on top of it, yes, there was chemistry, but something's got to give. Like at some point in the chemistry, you have to let something happen. And I feel like that book is one of those, I can tell they want a lot of the stuff to happen towards the end. So the middle was getting incredibly dull, and I just had no interest in continuing. The next that I read and DNF'd was This'll Be Fun by E.B. Asher. Okay. The start of it was absolutely abysmal. It will not grasp you. At least for me, it didn't. I had no interest to see where it would go, even after just a couple of chapters. And one thing I am noticing with the genre of cozy fantasy, at least for me, a trend is I feel like that genre term is becoming synonymous with a lack of plot, a lack of structure, a lack of effort even in the story. And that's not something I want to read when I need those 3 things. I need the characters to actually be fleshed out. I need like effort in it. And I just feel like a lot of these cozy fantasies I've been reading lately aren't offering that. And I will probably be backing off cozy fantasies unless someone is like, hey, maybe this will change your mind. Another one that I listened to this month was The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. Now, this will be my 3rd book, and it will be my last of Caitlin Starling's. My issue with that is I have yeah, I think 2 I finished, and then this one it was the first DNF. But on paper, her books, her stories sound so interesting, very up my alley. It's the overall writing, the execution of the story that just never seems to work for me. And I don't like that because her story sounds so cool. And then it's just like I read it and I'm like, this isn't for me. And then another one that did that for me was The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. Such a cute little cover. Yes, it's YA, but so many people were being like, it's worth it, give it a try. My thing is, I did give it a try. It just didn't grab me. And on top of it, it is a big book. Like you just saw, it's a pretty big book with sequels coming in. And it just, I don't know. There was just nothing to it that made me want to keep reading. Yeah, I'm sure it works for other people and probably for like a younger crowd especially, but it wasn't doing it for me. Okay. I've read other works by Olivie Blake. This one seemed interesting. Masters of Death. It's also cute. Ain't that cute? The color scheme. My issue is, I did give it a try. Gave it all of like 2 chapters. But even in my like efforts of wanting to give it a try, that writing style that she implements is just not for me. It's probably never going to be for me, and that's okay. But I had that one on my shelf and I was like, well, I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to give this author another go. And I gave that book a try. It doesn't work for me, at all. And another one that also did not work for me, and I know it worked for a lot of people, and it's gorgeous and it made me sad. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I also read The One Dark Window. I didn't go to the next, but One Dark Window was not good for me. I feel like it was okay, but it just wasn't, I wasn't going to continue the duology. But I saw this, I saw the cover, and I mean, it's so pretty. And I was like, okay, let's give another story. I'm always big on giving authors at least a second try, unless it's like, there's like a problematic, but that author's writing style is just not for me. I gave that like 13 chapters. So I feel like I gave that a concerted effort. And I can say like, I'm trying to think of nice. I like Bartholomew. I think that like little cutesy character was really fun in that book. It just wasn't enough to keep me interested. I will say a book that, I'm sorry, this was just atrocious writing. The Games Gods Play, by Abigail Owen. Atrocious writing. And it's, I mean, again, I can show it. Pretty. I bought this at Barnes & Noble because it was pretty, and that's my fault. But the issue with The Games Gods Play was, like I said, the writing and the style choice of writing is just so atrocious. I just could not be bothered. I got to the beginning of chapter 3, and I was like, I don't think I want to read this. And I kept reading. I got to the end of chapter 3, and I was like, there's just no way. I'm unable to finish this without like being miserable. My last DNF was Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. I have had that on my bookshelf a while, so I was like, I'm going to attempt it. I cannot read, especially in the romance genre, but I cannot read books where the adults have an act or mentality or just are written as if they're like teens or even kids. I don't understand why we're doing this to adult characters where it makes them just not interesting, not good. And it makes for the story to be very juvenile of a read and just very odd. I don't know who starts this stylistic choice. I don't know why we continue it, but adults should like at least behave somewhat like adults. I'm not saying like, adults are adults. Of course there's going to be immature moments. So I'm not saying that. It's the way it's written where I'm just like, I don't like that. But that's everything I read for September. If you like this, please subscribe and like it. And I will see you in the next.